Don't get the guy stirring your pasta every few seconds. Yes.
Salt in there?
Yes, there's salt.
Okay.
We salt the water for pasta. Boiling salt water is what we need. Can you grab me a shake pan from back there, Brandon? Or see if you can find me a big, long, wide lid. These burners are really hard to bring water to a boil on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to simmer that, and the only way to tell when pasta is done is how.
Taste it.
Taste it or bite into it?
Bite it.
Why do I bite into it?
To see if it's al dente.
Exactly, so if I see it, it's al dente. So if I'm making fettuccine pasta, and I've got fresh pasta, and I've rolled it through a sheet, and then I line it up and run it through a cutter to make fresh pasta, do y'all know what that's called? I mentioned it and said it would be on your final exam during the pasta lecture. When I'm running this through the pasta machine to make fettuccine, what is that process called? Anybody remember?
No.
It starts with an E.
Making pasta.
It
That's all I
ends with an N. It's called extrusion. Remember they had the picture of the pasta going through the machine?
I remember now.
Extrusion. You need to know what that is. When I run pasta dough through a cutter or a shaper, that's called extrusion. You need to know what that is. So I'm going to lean over, stir the pasta again. Penne pasta traditionally takes about 10 to 15 minutes. I am not going to make you stand here while I cook this for 10 to 15 minutes, all right? So I'm going to take this, and I'm going to put it on the stove. Reduce that down to a simmer because I don't boil it. If I continue to boil it, what's going to happen is, if I continue to boil it, I'm going to have a lot of water loss, and on top of a lot of water loss, I'm going to have water boil over, because as the starch releases from the pasta, it creates a foam, a starchy foam, and that foam will boil over and get all over my my stovetop. So I reduce it to a simmer. I have to wash pasta off with cold water after I've cooked. Does that make sense?
Yes, Chef.
If I don't, then I'm going to have very starchy pasta, and that's why we don't cook noodles in the chicken noodle soup, because it releases starch in there. The starch is not very flavorful. Okay? Take a bite of that cornstarch and you'll get a general idea of how flavorful the starch is in the soup or a sauce. We never cook rice inside of a soup that we're preparing it in. Does anybody know why?
Starch.
The starch release from the rice is not very flavorful. It will distort the flavor of whatever you're doing. The next thing I'm going to cook here, guys, is called quinoa. Quinoa, guess what? Somebody tell me what quinoa is.
Grain.
It's a grain. What's its claim to fame?
9 essential vitamins and minerals.
The only one that has them.
Yeah, it's the only grain that has all 9 essential amino acids. And you can get it in red and black, and this is just plain old white quinoa here.
So that would be a good grain for a vegan or vegetarian?
A vegan or a vegetarian, things like this are imperative for them. So what I'm going to do is just take that and put it in the water. And I can salt the water or not salt the water. It really doesn't matter. What I'm showing you is the cooking procedure. What I want to do with this after it's cooked is I'm going to season it. I may saute vegetables with it, but I don't want to cook those in there with this. I want to cook the grain separately by simmering, and I reduce it down to a simmer, and then I cook the grain, and it usually takes 10 or 15 minutes to cook quinoa. Okay? Again, I'm just showing you the process. Once you finish your quinoa, I want you to add some ingredients to it. Okay? Our choice. Your choice. Whatever you want to put in there. There's a ton of mushrooms in this building right now. Harley actually ordered double the amount that we needed for our class, so we got a ton of mushrooms.
In other words, you want us to get rid of those for you.
Yes, I would like to get rid of a big portion of them. So mushrooms would be the idea to add to this stuff. All right, quinoa simmering. I reduced it to a simmer. That's what a simmer is. I'm going going to simmer it, and all this liquid is going to soak into that grain. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes, Chef.
It won't evaporate, or it's
If it does, what do I do? Add more water.
hot water.
It's so simple. We get caught up in little pieces and worrying about it. If I get a sauce too thick, what do I do?
Add stock.
I add hot water. Why do I add hot water to it?
It's already hot. You'd have to reheat it again.
I add hot water. I don't have to reheat it as much, but it stops the cooking process. So, and that way my sauce doesn't continue to thicken. I mean, you can fix anything. Just add a little hot water. If you need more water, add more water. Cooking as a chef it's not brain surgery. It's just little things like we know to add little water if we need this. We know to add a pinch of salt. We know when to add the fresh basil, when to add the dry basil. And then experience, we know what to do under specific situations. So if something doesn't work one way, we know how to fix it. If I cook this quinoa, and personally I think quinoa is nasty. I mean, I don't like it at all. It has a bitter flavor to it. When I cook it, I will put it with some Israelite couscous or something like that. And then I'll serve it. But I'm not just going to serve plain old quinoa. Because plain old quinoa really needs some seasoning to it. All right, I got boiling salt water with what else in here?
Oil.
Boiling salt water with what else? I got oil in here. So I have my fettuccine. I'm not going to lay this over the side as I see in so many movies and cooking shows. That's not how you do fettuccine. What I'm going to do is kind of separate it like so.
Oh, they don't stick
And for
together.
every pound of pasta, how much water do I need? 1 gallon. 1 gallon, very good. So if I got a pound of pasta, I need a gallon of water. Alright, once I get my fettuccine in there, as soon as I get it in, I'll wait about 30 seconds and then I stir it. And I have to stir this fettuccine throughout the cooking process, or it's going to stick together and I'll get 2 pieces of fettuccine stuck to each other and I'll have to pull them apart. And then the inside of it will be cooked properly and the outside will be overcooked. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes, Chef.
So I stir it. Kind of see this.
Yeah,
kind of
oil is
separated.
supposed to help keep it from sticking together though too, right?